Okay. Hello and welcome to the ninth episode of the Bolo Pascual show. And with my guests, we have the hosts of Discussion Room 5. They often go live like weekly or how many times a week you go live on Facebook.
I guess
Yeah,
whenever.
whenever we feel like it.
You can catch them weekly. So if you are okay, I'm gonna tell you why you should follow them. But if you already know them and you haven't followed them, follow them. And I just want you guys to introduce yourselves briefly, and then I'll go with my questions that I prepared for y'all. Let's start with Billy. This alphabet.
Okay, I go first. Alright, my name is Billy and I'm a host of DR5. Yeah, that's it. How about you, Java?
Awesome.
I'm Java, and I guess I'm a host of DR5. I mean, I wasn't on all the episodes, but um, I've been on the recent ones.
And what is DR5 all about?
Well,
It's
in my,
mostly talking about controversies mostly because that's how we started. There was a controversial topic about this other podcast that is affiliated with the school officially, and everyone was saying that, well, we don't really like the podcast, the quality, whatever they were trying to say, and we just started talking about it uh, as a joke. They're actually called DR95. So we're like, you know what? We'll call ourselves DR5, right? And we'll just do it as a joke and bring both sides since we do these things anyway. So that's how it actually started. But we make it as relevant to the experience of, I would say, university students as possible. Like we have uh, topics about online trash talkan, right?
Mhm.
And online classes. Yeah. But most of the episodes, we have two very well responded to episodes. Both of them are actually about like controversies about people in the university itself.
Mm. And how do you think it is received compared to the podcast that you reacted to, like the podcast that was made prior you making DR5? Like, how is it different?
How is it different?
well, the difference is the way we go about it. The amount of, I mean, the quality isn't as great in the sense that we are more impromptu. We're more off script, I'd say. It's pretty. It's just a bunch of friends having fun talking about issues, and I think that's the appeal of it
Compared to like
because it's more really.
scripted?
They're a bit more formalized, like they send out pub mats before they talk about something, and then it tells the people what they're gonna talk about. So I would say, like most of the we get our material, like our trigger, I would say, for the conversations from DFW, and from there we get the feedback also. And a lot of the people there say that like, no, we have shit public what do you call that, production value, right? So DR5 has shit production value. DR95 has better production value.
Mm.
But I would say the value coming from DR5 is the ability to bring out more critical discussions, I would say, than like the personal opinions of the speakers themselves, like as compared to like DR95. I can't really say much about them now because I have stopped watching them. I only like tried watching them from the beginning.
Who has a larger audience at this point in time?
That's hard to tell. Okay, that's
Okay,
hard to
okay.
tell. I wouldn't
Yeah.
comment on that because like I don't want to offend them. They're also my friends,
Okay,
and
got it.
they have pretty good viewership too, and like
Okay.
some people actually enjoy their show.
Yeah, I just want to echo about what y'all said about production value. I really think that production value isn't so important, because if we say that our content is based on the production value, we don't recognize that what comes outside of our mouth is more important than the graphics or scenery or like quality at the end. So I'll trade someone with a brain and someone that like speaks like their minds compared to someone who has like flashy stuff, but then like we can't get a lot of like insights and varying perspectives. So I think that's the appeal that I see from discussion room 5. I'm just gonna check the other questions I wrote down.
Okay, go ahead.
Do you
Sure.
think does this play to the university community or the? Can we disclose your school or we can't? All right.
Don't disclose it.
Okay. Wag na lang. Okay, fine. What role do you think it plays to your community, online community of university students?
When we start with Java, from like outside looking in.
I think it gives an avenue for things to be talked about because um, if a podcast is officially recognized by a school, it's going to have to be a lot more censored in a sense, or not really censored, but they have to be more careful. Um, with the concept that we're just friends talking about issues, I guess it's more free form and we're more free to discuss what we think. So I think that's what resonates with people as well.
Awesome. How about you, Billy?
So beyond that, like the resonance with the people, right? I would say it's a bit more informative because people don't really see the value of like having to look at the other side. Because most of the time when we look at issues, right, and there are two sides for most of them, like one side has to be wrong, right? Because they're opposing each other. But I feel like the opportunity to argue on both sides, like how we usually do in debate, right, kind of triggers something something in the minds of the viewers, like okay, the other side also kind of makes sense, and I feel like that kind of conversation always needs to be had, especially when we're having controversial topics, because like
Mm,
most of the time it's not just about yes no, it's about like well yes but and then no but, right?
I see. And why is it important to have healthy discourse between opposing sides?
Healthy discourse between opposing sides, I think first of all it kind of makes the issue clearer, so people can talk about it, then you'll have more information about it. And it doesn't necessarily mean that like everything that has to be said that will be said needs to be said, and we can talk about how we can move forward from that. I think that's the real value. It's like how do you move forward from this issue? Like
Mm,
okay, if this part is true, then how do we move about it? If it's not true, how do we go about like solving this issue? Something like that, I
awesome.
would
How
say.
about for
But
you,
mostly
Java?
it's for entertainment.
I mean, for me, without having the opposite side represented, you're not really gonna get anywhere with your discussion. You're just going to be reinforcing your beliefs, and you
Mm,
need to have an opposition in order to understand where the other side is coming from, and like Billy said, move forward. And I think you need to have that representation of both
mm.
sides.
What is the importance to question your own beliefs and biases? Like, why is it important? Why can't I just stick with my like political side and just say that this is true and you can't change my mind because this is my social circle says.
Because we live in a society, because we have to interact with other people. We're all going to be interacting with each other, and there needs to be a common ground. And if we just stick to our own beliefs, we're never going to be able to understand another side. And you don't have to abandon your belief in order to understand someone else's. You just at least need to have them represented, or at least be able to listen to them somehow.
I
Yeah, I think it's more like about it's not really about what's true, because most of the time we can't know for sure what's true. We just have to look at what makes sense, right? And that's I feel like that's a more reasonable standard when you're trying to like behave in a society, because then you'll be able to respect other people even though you guys disagree.
Yeah. What do you call this? Would like. I'm gonna share first, but I'm gonna ask you the same question. In engaging discourse in discourse with other people with different perspectives, have you also got to change your perspective or evolve your perspective based on talking to the people that you disagree with? For me, how I got to change my perspective especially in the political scene of the Philippines, is that people who disagree with me keeps on telling me that we need to talk about the good things that the government is doing, because clearly I'm on the opposition of that. And the way I changed my perspective before is that now I think when we have discourse or like we have debates, we gotta have a healthy platform for debates and discourse. And I think one thing that I've been missing so far in my content is that trying to identify common goals and how we can like promote these common goals together. So for example, we may disagree about leadership. We may disagree about, I don't know, just general things about the Constitution. But at the end of the day, we can all agree that we want to prioritize our local economy. We want to prioritize Filipino products, even if you're in the left or the right or whatever, right? And for me, out of talking to people I disagree with and people I have like healthy debates with, that's how I change my perspective. That I think there also needs to be a platform with common goals and see like how much we can work towards that as well, while there are still goals that we haven't solved and we still disagree about. How about for you? Do you have like an experience where your mind or thinking has evolved or shifted or changed?
I, I think we should start with Java.
Okay, sure. Well, what comes to mind is how I was before I entered the university that I studied in. So I was very, you would say, left thinking because I was very exposed to debate culture, and my opinions were very closed. So I was very against the right thinking of where I was studying at the time. And I had to sort of understand where they were coming from. And the way I got to that is before arguing, you have to find common ground. Because, like you said, people want the good. So you have to establish that like why they choose to go this route towards that end before you talk about the method in which they reach the end. So does that make sense? There's
Yeah, it does.
always, I'd say there's a good goal in mind. It's just how we get there that's different. And you need to establish that common ground. Otherwise, you're going to end up arguing. You're not going to understand where that person's coming from. So, yeah, that's like listening to them. That means understanding where they come from.
So before it's like I want to be right, I want to be correct, and now it's like looking for a common ground and seek these questions. That's how your mind has changed in terms of.
Yes.
Awesome, cool. How about you, Billy?
For me, I think the goal of wanting to talk to people who have a different opinion than you, I think that I have great desire for that, like for sure. But okay, first of all, there are some people who are hard to talk to because like they want to talk to you because they want to change your mind.
Mm.
And and if you reach a point in which like you fundamentally disagree on the basis of your arguments, then the relationship breaks down. So I feel like people should come into like the discourse thing wanting to be changed. Like because I believe that most of us will be right in our opinions. It's just that whether it's just about what things we value. Like for example, some people value feelings, some people value the pragmatic outcomes of you're whatever you're arguing about, right? So for me, I feel like okay, the more I talk to people who are like disagreeing with me, the more I learn about their perspective. So it kind of satisfies me personally because well, I know more. That's one. Like everyone wants to be smarter, right? And I kind of want to know where I'm wrong until before way before it matters. Like I don't want to be wrong. I don't want to find out that I'm wrong during the time when like I have to pay the price, right? That's why I want to like talk to all these people, and I also expect my mind to be changed. But then again, you need to be convincing. Like for me, you need to make sense and convincing. I can't just agree with you just because well, you know, respect your opinion or whatever, right? I won't do that. I would say well, you need to make sense for me to be able to be convinced, and I also want to be convinced because like one, it makes me smarter. Two, it prevents me from being like from doing stupid things in the future.
Awesome. That's super insightful. I just want to echo one thing that one of my favorite authors have said in a talk in Google. Yuval Noah Harari, the one that wrote *Sapiens* and *Homo Deus* and 21 Lessons for the 21st Century, something like that. What he said is that we don't have to agree on the answers, but we have to agree on the questions. What are the questions that we want to answer? I really like that because I think that's a common ground. So for example, like we want equity in society and equality, or like how do we achieve a more equitable society? Maybe that's a question that we all like, and then we just have different answers to how to get to a more equitable society. But at the end of the day, if we can agree on the question of is equity something that we gotta is something that we want to have more in our country, then I think that's a good starting point to have that particular discourse, and agree what equity is and like what is a good outcome for the next generation and the generations before us, all that stuff. Um, Now, my question is, what are your standards for you to say, okay, I'm ready to change my mind? Like, what has to be like ticked off your chest? So for me, it's about showing me data to prove that one this thing has caused this effect. And if I can see like some data and someone saying that, or an expert saying that, yeah, this is likely to be true, then I'm likely to change my mind. If there's like a data set that I can look at and experts who can like pitch in their ideas, that's where I'm likely to change my mind. How about you? Like when do you get to change your mind or like evolve your mindset towards a particular issue?
Uh, for me, I feel like a lot of our opinions have a fundamental grounding. So I have to first identify what that assumption is, what that assumption is on their argumentation. And most of the time, I'd be able to believe that, like, okay, your opinion is valid based on your assumption, right? I just need to see that the assumption is aligned with the argumentation because, from in my opinion, there's a lot of things that we just assume, and like there's no way of arguing to a point where like you can actually change that assumption because it's just an assumption. Like, is there a god, is there not a god, right? All your arguments will be based on the assumption that there is a god, or like the assumption that there's not a god, or like if you want to question whether there's a god or not, you have to assume that there are certain parameters that will enable you to measure whether there's a god or there's not a god, and those parameters are also debatable. So I just want to see how you can bridge the gap between your assumption and your conclusion. And like I will tell you that, well, you make sense, right? Because this is what you assume, and you have to recognize that it's an assumption on your side.
Mm.
If you don't recognize that, then it's hard to talk to you. You get what I mean? It's like,
Yeah,
oh, you want to recognize that it's an assumption. It's not an absolute truth.
I see. So your method is like, I want to see your assertion and then tell me how you're going to build that up and whether your conclusion fits
Yes.
my standard of a good conclusion, bad conclusion, or something like that.
Yeah, you just need to take me through the process, the logical links of causality, right? As long as you make sense, I would probably believe that I would probably tell you that you make sense. Whether what you're saying is true or not, I try not to make that judgment because I recognize that, like, most of the time I'm pretty stupid. Like, I don't know a lot of things. Like, I would say that, like, that's a very bad position to be in. But like, at this early stage of my life, I don't really think that like knowing the truth matters that much for me, because I don't really have to do have to make a lot of big decisions, right? So I think whether whatever other people is saying is true or not will be important when I'm a decision maker, where in which like the decisions are like higher stakes. So as long as it makes sense, you can go ahead because it's mostly a matter of personal opinion.
Got it. How about for you, Java?
I agree mostly with Billy. I usually go with the flow of logic from which they're arguing, but also I like to focus on the presupposition, like what made them think this way, like where did this train of thought start out, and that usually goes towards their background or where they come from, and it's important to understand that these arguments are deeply rooted in upbringing and presuppositions, and in order to understand that you have to understand the person. So when you just argue based on without really knowing the person, you're not. I don't think you're gonna get anywhere because you need to take also their background into account to reach a common ground. But where I don't really agree with Billy is that I think you always have to seek the truth, because even if you're making small decisions, these decisions that you make, no matter what age you are going to resonate way later in your life. And I think it may seem small now, but it's going to guide you towards the future. So I don't think
Okay,
there's big decisions or
I
small
get I
decisions.
get what you mean, but like I'm not saying that we should veer away from the quest of truth. I'm just saying that well, it's hard to establish what the truth is at this point. Like at any point in time actually, but like if you follow the like my own personal opinion, which is that we should follow what makes sense, then we'll get to a point where our judgment will actually approximate what is true, while we still won't have that like opinion of ourselves that well what I know is the absolute truth, and like because it hasn't been challenged yet, that means that like therefore it must be true. So I think that having that open mind of like not assuming that like some things are true, or like certain absolute
Okay.
truths exist, or
Yeah,
like
yeah.
your judgment is the truth, then it actually opens up a lot of like possibility for growth while still approximating that judgment of truth.
Mhm. Got
Okay,
it.
I got it.
All right. Now I'm going to veer away about from the topic, and I just want to bring in our debate instincts into the playing field. So let's
No.
look at the scenario. In Hawaii, they have islands. All right, and there are like islands there that are sacred to the indigenous people of Hawaii. And but the advantage of some of those islands is that it's the perfect spot to bring in big ass telescopes,
Oh, I know this discussion.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
right? And for you, what do you think about it? Like, what's your opinion? And I don't know if we're like kind of majority leaning. I'm gonna talk about the counter opinion. But for you, do you believe that NASA should have a right to put in like a huge ass telescope inside the sacred piece of land in Hawaii and cutting some trees in order for them to see the universe better and clearer? What would
Okay.
take on it? Just for the sake of discourse, choose a
All right.
yes or no. NASA has a right, and what would you say?
I don't think NASA has a right to do that because
Interesting.
it depends on like who has authority over or over that particular land. And I would say that while I personally would think that a telescope would be very useful for like the entire humanity, it may not be useful for the people who own that piece of land. You get what I mean? So
Okay.
it's really more about like protecting your own property. I think
Mhm.
that that's the that's the principle behind it. Like NASA has their own properties. Why don't they like they can make decisions based on that? And like these people in Hawaii don't want to meddle with their decisions. Like for example, if okay, I'll create a hypothetical tradition, right? Okay, uh, in order for you to start an experiment, there's a cultural belief that you need to take off one of your fingers, right? Okay, because of this cultural belief, uh and the goal of taking off one of your fingers is so that to please the research god, so that your research will be successful, right? Okay, then that's that particular tradition is something of value to these people of this hypothetical culture, right? So these people of hypothetical culture can't impose that value system on NASA the same way that NASA shouldn't impose their value system on the people of this hypothetical culture.
I see. How about you, Java? You agree or disagree? Should NASA have a right to put like their telescopes there?
No, I disagree. I don't
Okay.
think that's right. For the same reasons as Billy, actually. I think that if these people have lived there for forever, there's no right to kick them out of their land and destroy their culture because we want to build, even if it's going to progress the society, because we can't build it on the foundation of destroying someone else's culture.
Okay. Got it. So I agree with you, but for the sake of argument, I would take the other side and I would say that NASA has a right. For me, like number one, they're government owned and Hawaii is part of the United States of America. So like that's gonna be my first answer. The technicality of it, NASA does have a right. Like the white people have been trying to conquer, Polynesian people ever since. They've successfully have. What do we do? They like in terms of international standards, probably. Um, but in terms of, I think where you're talking about is the moral standard of it, of imposing things to indigenous cultures. My argument of it would be that, but oh my god, I'm gonna sound like super bad and like heartless and
Go ahead.
whatever
That's cool.
Go ahead.
Devil's advocate,
whatever.
man. Yeah.
But this is my argument. This is my argument. Is that because cultures and religions have been made because of trying to explain natural phenomena about the world, this is of contribution to these particular cultures because now we increase knowledge about the cosmos, because back in the past in Hawaii they have like interpretations of what the cosmos is, but I think this is an evolution of like how people contribute to their culture because they know more about their world, meaning there's more insights about their gods and their beliefs and all that stuff. And so that would be my argument. That's one way
Okay.
culture. But I do agree, it has to be within the consent of these indigenous.
Okay.
So if I were still to take my stance, I would say that what I want on my side is that we take a lot of effort to convince them to say that a telescope is okay and for them to be fine with it. But yeah, that's the discourse. I love it. All right, we have 4 minutes left. We have, unless you want to rebut or you want.
If you want,
Actually, yeah,
I mean,
then we have to go to your assumption that, well, the judgment of scientists is better than this culture. Like, okay, what they believe is more what scientists believe is more important than what the people believe. So we have to go to that assumption because we can even go to the extent of asserting that like science is also a form of religion in the way that, like, it has basic set of I would say belief. Like, for example, it's a bit of a stretch, but about in law they call it reasonable doubt. Uh, science has a version of the alpha and the beta error.
Okay.
Yeah, so the alpha and beta error is also a point of faith. Like, this is the limit of this is the extent of our knowledge, but like since it's this level of reasonable, then we will take it to be objectively true,
I
right? It's
see.
the same thing with like religion, except like the reasonable doubt side of religion would be a bit less a bit less leaning on like observable facts, in a sense that it can be measured by scientific tools. But if we
Okay.
measure it with religious tools, then it would also make sense. You get what
Okay.
I mean?
Yeah. So we have 2 minutes left, and we'll continue this discussion. So if you get stopped, we can do a part two of this if you want. All right.
All right, all right.
So Java, in the last 2 minutes, would you want to say something about a response to the argument?
I think that it's also based on the assumption that knowledge is inherently better, because are these people going to be directly benefited? Because yeah, they're going to know more about science, but they also lose their entire way of life. And for the people who have lived their lives like since they were born in a certain way? Are we going to impose this new knowledge on them and tell them that their entire being is wrong?
Mm.
So I you have to balance that out.
Got
And
it.
like
Got it. I see.
it's good that like we at least try to tell them that it's going to be better. But who's to say that they're happier that way, or
It's
they're
only
going to
them
be,
that they could say, right? They're the only people who could say that they'll be happy.
yeah.
Just in response to Billy, I would say, so if I were to defend that like science has a set of assumptions, I think that science has allowed us to create planes that fly and cars that move, compared to religion that says we turn water into wine out of faith, but it doesn't really turn into wine. We gotta buy them commercially and have them in a ceremony. Oops. I'm gonna get kicked out of my university. I was kidding, but I mean that's my answer to the extent that like yeah maybe because science makes things move and stuff. What like for example if we know more about the space, if a comet is to hit like the Earth, maybe we have more information how to deflect it or how to preempt it in the future and all that stuff.
But at the same time, I would say the response to that is that while science gives us flying cars and everything, culture gives us morals. Gives us standards of living, etiquette, and the way that we interact socially. So I think they're both really important. They're not really
Yeah, it's
I
like
see.
it creates. Yeah, it depends on what tool you're using for like uh for benefit, right? Because like if you want to say, well, standard of living as a tool, then there's both sides can have merit. But like if you want to say if you want to measure them on the basis of their veracity, right? You need to, if you use scientific tools, you'll get scientific results. But if you use cultural and religious tools, you get cultural and religious results. You get what I mean? So it's a
Got it.
matter of measurement that actually creates that actually assigns the value to the phenomenon itself.
Awesome, awesome, awesome sauce. Dope. I really like it. I really like it. Like we can go on forever and ever.
Yes.
That was rich. That was rich. Like I want people to not be bored and like watch this podcast. Like I'm not sure if they're gonna reach this point, but I fucking I love
yeah.
what we talked about, man. Okay, I see. Awesome sauce. So yeah, let's try to end it in a while. Like one last question I'd like to ask both of you is very general, and this is where we're gonna end. What is your a step to the right direction regarding our country or regarding our society? If there's like a for you a clear step to the right direction, what would that be?
We should import talent. We have a lot of smart people with not enough know-how to improve our one, technology. That's number one. Number two is like the institutions themselves, how they're going to be arranged. We should hire people who knows how to do these things and teach us how to do it so that we can expand on it rather than take the long route of like having to develop it organically, because I feel like we're falling way behind the other countries because of our own Filipino pride.
Got it. Okay. How about you, Java?
I would say human discussions because a lot of our discussions happen online, not face to face. I mean, even being able to see you guys face to face helps a lot because there's more accountability, there's more relatability and understanding. So, sort of, yeah, connecting to someone on a human level before we actually talk about issues beyond ourselves because it starts with individuals talking, and that's what makes it relatable. That's what makes it honest, and that's how we get to a consensus. Like understanding someone, being open.
That's awesome. For me, I think our step to the right direction is that people start grading themselves by their own standards compared to traditional systems of how they are graded. So, for example, in social media, I don't think people should grade themselves based on the number of followers and views and comments that they have, which is like the traditional way to grade yourself, whether you're a good social media platform. So I think like content creators could find ways to grade themselves, like how happy am I today? or like, did I treat people well enough today to the people that I talk to? And those are the variety of things. Or like, for example, like students who are learning something in school, it's like, I think as much as schools would grade you on math, science, and English, I think students could still create standards for themselves. So like, for example, for me, when I missed like exams and stuff, but then I was doing gigs and I was also selling my comic books and stuff. And for me, my grade is like, how much were my sales? How many times did I do a gig? How many events and people did I talk to about my initiatives outside of school? And I think the reason why I think it's a step to the right direction is because after you're done with school, the majority of your life, no one's gonna grade you except yourself. And once you have that idea of how you want to grade yourself, that's where you can track your progress and goal set new things and try to choose what you really want to do in life. And I think you get to do that when you start young and start grading yourselves outside the traditional ways schools grade you. Because the grade of what the schools give you doesn't necessarily reflect whether you're going to be successful in life. What's going to be reflective is that whether or not you're doing the things that you love and you're making an impact and doing you and being happy and uplifting other people, if that's the standard that you choose to have for yourself.
Love
Anyway,
it.
gotta learn how to shorten my sentences, but yes.
But yeah, made sense. Love it.
All right, last thoughts before we end.
I want to promote our
Yes, plug it.
want to promote our I would say it's a talk show because we don't really publish it on a podcast. I want to promote our a small talk show called DR5. We uploaded our episodes on Facebook naman. We'll try to make it a regular thing so that people don't have to predict when and where will pop out. And yeah, so I feel like what we have planned for you guys for the next few I would say weeks would be so much more entertaining, and I would say with a better production value than the previous one. So keep tuning in to DR5. We will have Bolo maybe at some point guesting in our show too. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm gonna hold you accountable to that. All right, you heard that, viewers. Hello, mom. And that. How about you, Java? Anything you want to say before we end?
No, this was fun. I really like it. I like the discussions. I like talking to you guys. Yeah, pretty much it.
All right, awesome. We can do this again soon. And for now, I'm gonna stop recording. See ya. Bye.
Bye.